The title of this presentation is Sealed or Marked in Music. This presentation originally came from Shauna Manfredine from the Lighted Way Ministry in Roseburg, Oregon. It was changed with permission into a different PowerPoint presentation and recorded by myself. Please note, we use the true names of Elohim, Yahuwah, our Father, and Yahusha, his Son, in all of our presentations. Music was made to serve a holy purpose, to lift the thoughts to that which is pure, noble, and elevating, and to awaken in the soul devotion and gratitude to our Creator and Savior. What a contrast between the ancient custom and the uses to which music is now too often devoted. How many employ this gift to exalt self, instead of using it to glorify Yahuwah? A love for music leads the unwary to unite with world lovers in pleasure gatherings where Yahuwah has forbidden his children to go. Thus that which is a great blessing, when rightly used, becomes one of the most successful agencies by which Satan allures the mind from duty and from the contemplation of eternal things. However, music is one of the most controversial parts of worship to Yahuwah the Creator. There is music that uplifts and worships Yahuwah, and there is music that he hates. He will reject and leads people to damnation. This is called Babylonian music, and the call to come out of Babylon includes shunning this type of music. In order to understand the power of evil music, and you are serious to find out, it will be necessary for you to listen to some. You can go to Google search to find various sound clips, listen to them, and you will understand. In order to understand what music contains the seal of Yahuwah and what music contains the mark of the beast, it will be necessary for you to listen to some of the music as I had mentioned in the previous slide. To go to Google search and find some clips so you know what the difference is. As it says in Ephesians 5:11, do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even expose them. In order to expose the deeds of darkness in music, these clips that you will find on Google are needed to make sure this important message is clear to everyone. Ephesians 5:11 states, do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even expose them. Having said this, I want to emphasize that this presentation is not intended to throw rocks at people or to put them down, but to show them what kind of music is acceptable, set apart, and what is to be shunned, as this is a salvational issue for sure. The bottom line is, who do we please, who do we honor, who do we obey, and who do we worship with our music. For this reason, it is a good idea to prove all things, according to 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Before we deal with music and worship, let's first look at music itself. Many have wondered what is more powerful, the music or the lyrics? Do the melody, harmony, and rhythm of music give a message? Is music speaking, or can it only speak to us when it has words with it? Shu Qing. In ancient times, the power of music over people is well known. Consider the words of Shu Qing from the 6th century BC. For changing people's manners and altering their customs, there's nothing better than music. Boethius, a Roman philosopher, lived circa 500 AD. Also believed the music itself was powerful. Here are his words. Music is a part of us and either ennobles or degrades our behavior. Confucius, about 500 BC, believed that music was powerful enough to impact a society's laws. If you would know if a people are well governed and if its laws are good or bad, examine the music it practices. Aristotle lived 300 BC. The politics taught that music had the power to influence the emotions and character of the listeners. Here's what he says. Music directly imitates the passions or state of the soul. When one listens to music that imitates a certain passion, he becomes imbued with the same passion. And if over a long time he habitually listens to the kind of music that rouses ignoble passions, his whole character will be shaped to an ignoble form. Socrates said, musical training is a more potent instrument than any other, because rhythm and harmony find their way into the inward places of the soul. That's from the Republic of Plato, page 88. Clearly, these well-known thinkers from past ages all believed and taught that music itself was a very powerful force, that it was powerful enough to govern the listener's laws, society, emotions, and even influence their character. David Crosby. This idea that music is powerful enough to affect the laws of a land and the value system of the people who listen to it isn't only believed by ancient minds. David Crosby, quoted by Peter Herbst in the Rolling Stone interviews, believed that the power of his music, was strong enough to spiritually and emotionally steal kids from their parents. Here's what it says. I figured the only thing to do was to swipe their kids. I still think it's the only thing to do. By saying that I'm not talking about kidnapping, I'm just talking about changing the value system, which removes them from the parent world very effectively. And that's from the Rolling Stones interviews, Rolling Stone Press, 1981. Does Scripture also teach that music has so much power to influence the listener? Yes. Consider the story of David and King Saul, recorded in 1 Samuel 16:23. When King Saul was in one of his dark, demonic broods, scaring everyone around him, the people would call for David. By playing soothing and godly music for King Saul, the evil spirit was driven from him for a brief time. But when it comes to a choice of what style of music should be played, to worship Yahuwah, there is very little evaluation about whether the music itself is good or bad. We have gotten into the habit of only judging its words. Many have simply treated music as a matter of taste, so long as the words are good. The devil has music that honors him, and Yahuwah has music that honors him. But many have simply treated music as a matter of taste, so long as the words are good. To get to the heart of the truth on this matter, we must ask and answer a serious questions. Why do we respond to music the way we do? What is the purpose of music? Do people from different cultures respond to music differently, making it acceptable for believers of certain cultures to worship with rowdy music styles? Styles of music serve certain purposes no matter what culture you're in. Think about the kind of music you would choose for a romantic anniversary dinner. And again, I would encourage you to go to Google search, if you're really serious, and find some clips on romantic music. Is the music or the lyrics which is most important in creating mood? The music itself creates the atmosphere. You can go to Google search again and find a sound clip to check it out for yourself. Before a baby learns the meaning of the words we speak, he first responds to the music or tone of our voice. Does the tone you use when saying the word no matter? When a baby first learns to respond to the word no, it isn't the word he's responding to, it's the tone. Music also has a tone which conveys meaning far beyond the words. The tone of the music can totally change its meaning. To demonstrate it's this to consider how a husband might express love to his wife. What if a husband did this to his wife? Shout, I love you. Now say I love you in a variety of tones. Was it words alone that conveyed the message? Or does the music or tone of our voice carry even more meaning than the words? The words I love you change in meaning depending on what tone we use to say them. For this reason we see that the tone or music of our voice is far more important in conveying the message than the words. And since this is so, music itself must be a language that is communicating something far more powerful than the lyrics. So, what is the primary purpose of godly music? Today, most believers would answer that the primary purpose of godly music is worship. But this has only been true in the last 100 years. Until recently, the primary purpose of music was to teach doctrine. To demonstrate this, consider how much truth is found in words of the old hymns. Then compare that to the amount of truth found in the more repetitive, modern Christian music. Now don't get me wrong. I am not suggesting that godly music shouldn't be about worship. I'm only pointing out that worship was never its primary purpose. Truth and doctrines were always the purpose. Hymns written by the Waldenses in the medieval and Renaissance eras show the emphasis on teaching doctrine. Consider this English translation of just one Waldensian hymn. All pageantry, not from the Bible word, most certainly arise from Italy. Of this truth we bear witness, hearts bestirred. As far as Rome itself, the Pope's city, just ask the Pope. He shall himself confess his celebrations do not come from God. The Jewish statutes, God alone, will bless where popes unholy refuse to trod. He may claim that the Bible is divine. But these grand liturgies are not found there. He does not say they are not Rome's design, invented for the God-man's idle prayer. Instead of Sabbath, they Sunday hold, the Passover into Easter transform. Whitsuntide they boldly make the celebration of the 50th day, Pentecost. This is from Bosnia Khazars 1588 to 1623 Samuel Kuhn. Das ist in German, die Sabbaterier in Siebenbürgen, ihre Geschichte, Literatur und Dogmatik. Budapest Verlag von Singer and Wolfer, 1894. Leipzig or Leipzig Verlag von Franz Wager, page 80. The three elements of music. But not only has Christian music changed in switching its primary purpose from teaching truth to worship, but Christian music has also changed by rearranging the musical elements. The musical elements are melody, harmony, and rhythm. All music has these three elements, but how they are arranged and which of the three is most emphasized determines which spiritual realm it is from. Until recently, Christian music had always emphasized the melody. This is the tune of the song. The melody is the intellect of the music. Melody was always most prominent. Next to melody came harmony. The harmony is a supporting role. It is less noticeable than the melody, but makes it richer and more beautiful for being present. Finally, Christian music always had rhythm. The rhythm is the spirit of the music. It is the force that moves the music. It is always present in any music, but was never emphasized or predominant. Modern Christian music has experienced a shift in focus in the musical elements. Rhythm is the most predominant. Harmony is the second most powerful element, and melody is barely there, or sometimes absent entirely. Remember, rhythm is the spirit of the music, while melody is the intellect. Now we know as believers that we aren't to let our feelings rule us. Rather, we are to make choices governed by knowledge. When we let our feelings rule us, we are easily overcome by the enemy. This is because feelings are easily influenced by Satan. If the devil lost the ability to control our emotions, he would lose the ability to control us entirely. That's how important playing with our feeling is. Now, if we can see that our lives are not to be governed by a spirit of emotion, but rather by scriptural-based knowledge and sound intellect, how can we think that reversing our emphasis to focus on the rhythm will have no spiritual effect? Music triggers different responses in our brains. Therefore, we respond differently to the music depending on whether melody, harmony, or rhythm is most emphasized. Melody. We listen to melody with the spiritual parts of our brains. Harmony. We listen to harmony with the intellectual part of our brain. Rhythm. We respond to rhythm on the primal and physical level. This is why people dance to music that puts an emphasis on the beat. From the earliest recorded Christian music, we find that Yahuwah's music was plainly different from the music used by pagans to worship the devil. How so? Because the pagans put the emphasis on the rhythm and emotion, while the believers put the emphasis on the melody and the knowledge of truth. This is something I hope to prove to you as we continue. But if this is so, we have to ask ourselves, does flipping the emphasis from melody to rhythm, from intellect to emotion, change the worship from Yahuwah to Satan? Or am I being extreme, even suggesting it? That's extreme. You may be thinking, what about the African American culture? The followers of Elohim in this culture are going to emphasize rhythm over melody simply because that's a cultural thing to do. But the language of music doesn't change by moving from one continent or culture to another. In Africa, like any other country, the mother sings her infant to sleep with soothing tones. There's no heavy, rhythmic, bumpety bumpety bump in an African lullaby. There's an African flavor to the lullaby, but it is the same soothing, quiet, gentle type of music that any culture sings to their babies to put them to sleep. Different cultures and a common melody. In the same way, no matter where you go, you will find these notes used for the same purpose. G, E, A, G, E. Isn't it amazing that this simple melody is used by children to taunt one another all around the world? Clearly, it is the music itself that is communicating a message. It's not just the words. The human experience includes feeling the same kinds of emotions no matter where we live. We all experience joy, fear, anger, and curiosity. For this reason, it shouldn't really surprise us to learn that the styles of music may have unique cultural flavors to them, but still basically remain the same. The style of the music in an African lullaby has the same tone as any lullaby music anywhere. Not only that, no matter where you are in the world, romantic music has a certain recognizable style. Each culture adds its own flavor to the style, but the style is recognizable all the same. And the heavy, emphasized rhythm has no place in romantic or lullaby music, no matter where you are on the globe. So where did we get the idea that worship music needed to emphasize the rhythm to suit cultural differences? This is one reason that music is called a universal language. On a deep level, everyone understands the tone of the music, even if they can't understand its words. This is because no matter what culture you are in, there are still three parts of music, and these three parts affect all of humanity in the same way. Music is a language everyone can understand. In 1 Corinthians 6:19 to 20, we find that we are all temples designed to house a spirit. We will either have the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, or the influence of demon spirits. Here's what it says. Or do you not know that your body is a dwelling place of the set-apart Spirit, who is in you, which you have from Elohim, and you are not your own? For you were bought with a price. Therefore esteem Elohim in your body and in your spirit, which are of Elohim. In order to answer this question, we must follow the advice of 1 John 4:1. Let us test the spirit of the heavy rhythm music popular in the world and in the churches today. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of Elohim, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. Now, before we can begin talking about Christian rock, we need to first look at the forms of secular rock it is imitating. In secular music, we find many modes of music which all share a heavy emphasis on the rhythm. Some might argue that jazz, country, rave, techno, and rock and roll are very different. Going back to the idea of how a message is conveyed by our tone of voice, it may surprise you to find that they are not different in their spiritual tone. Science has revealed that certain sounds can be used to change your brainwaves. In fact, in ancient satanic rituals, sound was especially used to alter our states of consciousness. Because of these sounds and the resulting altered state of consciousness, people were most successful in the worship of Satan. Now here is a quote from Jonathan Goldman, Healing Sound, The Power of Harmonics, page 11. The use of music in sacred ceremonies and shamanic rituals has occurred since ancient times. It has recently been verified that sound can be used to affect and change our brain waves. The changes of these rates create changes in consciousness, allowing mystically altered states to be induced. The relationship between occult wisdom and sound may at first seem far removed. Yet in the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, Rome, Greece, Tibet, India, and other centers of learning, knowledge of sound was a highly refined science. I promised earlier to show you how emphasizing the beat instead of the melody is a practice that comes from paganism. So let's take a closer look at this concept. Sun worship has been part of pagan mystery religion since ancient times. Music was used to heighten the most demonic states of worship to the sun god. The same kinds of satanic music used in ancient sun worship are found in modern music as well. So how did pagan sun worship become part of contemporary music anyway? Sounds of voodoo. John H. Steele in The World of the Unexplained revealed the real reason why primal drummers beat out a heavy rhythm style of music. The follower of Voodoo seeks to incorporate a LOA demon into himself by writhing and leaping through a dance, while drums bang out complex rhythm. When just the right rhythm is found for an individual LOA, the dancer takes it up and the LOE enters the soul. His physical and mental powers are immediately heightened. He becomes godlike himself. So this again is from John H. Steele, World of the Unexplained. When drums were first invented in Africa, the rhythm beaten out on them were for one purpose only, to have an evil spirit inhabit the listener's body. But that can still be true today, right? Hendrix and possession. The same heavy, syncopated rhythm invented in Africa are found in popular modern music, just as it did in the old times. The music results in demonic possession. Consider the story told by Fane Pritchton, former girlfriend to the famous rocker Jimi Hendrix. He used to always talk about some devil that was in him, and he didn't have any control over it. He didn't know what made him act the way he acted, and songs just came out of him. He was so tormented and just torn apart, and he used to talk about having someone drive this demon out of him. This is from Fane Bridgeton talking about her former boyfriend, Jimi Hendrix, on the soundtrack to the movie Jimi Hendrix. Not only is the heavy syncopated rhythm an important part of pagan practices, even resulting in spirit possession, it also causes our brains to go into a highly receptive, hypnotized state. In Dave Hunt's book called Occult Invasion, we read that rhythmic drumming and dancing put the human brain into the same altered state as drugs, hypnosis, and other occult practices. The practice of yoga and other forms of Eastern meditation creates the same altered states as do drugs, hypnosis, drumming, dancing, visualization, and other schematic practices now so widely used in the West. This is from the book D. Hunt, Occult Invasion, pages 227. To understand the true nature of this music, let's take a few moments to look at the history and philosophy behind voodoo and its music. In the occult beliefs of ancient African religions, the crossroads is an experience where the physical and spiritual worlds meet. In this experience, demons would show themselves plainly to and in the people. The Crossroads. Michael Ventura, in his book Hear That Long Snake Moan, explains that the heavy beat is used to bring a person into a crossroad experience. To tribal peoples, religious worship is seen as a bodily celebration. This is why the rhythm, the beat in the worship music is so accentuated. The goal of African religions is to experience, with their bodies, the crossroads of the physical and spiritual worlds. And this is from Hear That Long Snake Moan by Michael Ventura, Whole Earth Review, Spring and Summer, 1987, page 32. As Brian Newman explains in his powerful series titled Voice of a Dying Planet, the African drums was originally formed as an idol. It is a symbol of the sun god and his unholy bride. On the end, you see the shape of the sun disk, and the fetched or stretched skin over the drum represents the tightly stretched stomach of the mother ready to give birth. Since ancient Babylon, where the unholy trinity first appeared, this was Nimrod, Semiramis, and the illegitimate son Tammuz. The African drums are considered sacred. They are washed, put to rest, and worshipped as deities. The belief is that the drums are the ears of gods, and that they must be played with the attitude that you are speaking to the gods on behalf of humanity. Religious ceremonies cannot begin until the dancers have saluted the drummers. This is from the book Hear That Long Snake Moan by Michael Ventura, Whole Earth Review, Spring and Summer 1987, pages 31 and 32. This salute to the drummer is still done at modern concerts. It takes place when the drummer plays a riff of music alone and all attention is on him or her. As Richard Hodges points out in his book Drum is the Ear of God, drumming is a primary source of demonic or occult power. Each percussive or vocal part has a slightly different rhythm, which coincides with and sometimes crosses the other rhythms or the guiding pulse at strategic moments. The drummers often shuffle their feet or sway their bodies in dance-like motions to assist them in maintaining contact with the main beat, especially when the rhythm is syncopated. During these rituals that still take place in the Congo and Yorubaland, the intricate layers of the multiple rhythmic drumming are considered a primary source of occult power. So this again is from the book Drum is the Ear of God by Richard Hodges, Material for Thought. Number 13, Far West Press, San Francisco, 1992. Notice that the kind of rhythm being used here, a syncopated polyrhythm, which is emphasized in the music. A polyrhythm happens when music doesn't have only one beat going on. All music has rhythm, but the kind of music used as the primary source of occult power is a kind where the rhythm is heavier than the melody, which may or may not be present, and it has at least one backbeat. Hear That Long Snake Moan again by Michael Ventura, Whole Earth Review. As these rituals intensify, the people who are dancing ultimately enter into that deep state of hypnotic physical meditation. The African deities called voodoo possesses them, and their bodies then become the crossroads of the physical and the spiritual worlds. There are no bystanders at a ceremony. Anyone present can become possessed by a voodoo or a demon. We have seen that there is a certain type of music which all cultures use to lull their babies to sleep. We have seen that there is a certain type of music which all cultures find romantic. Could it be that there is a kind of music that invites demons to inhabit us, no matter what culture we are from? Scientists are even quietly admitting that demonic possessions does result from the altered state of consciousness which heavy, rhythmed, hypnotic music generates. Here from Dave Hunt again, Occult Invasion, Harvest House, page 69, that demonic possession can result from entering an altered state of consciousness is being increasingly acknowledged by scientists. But is there a direct connection between ancient voodoo practices and modern hip hop or rock? What do the rhythms of ancient voodoo music have to do with music today? The satanic music from occult rituals in Africa came to the United States through the slave trade. This is how the occult music began to take root in North America. Here again from the book Hear That Long Snake Moan by Michael Ventura. In the 1800s, slaves from Africa were sold to the white merchants in the West Indies, Haiti, Cuba, and other North America. The African slaves that were taken from the native lands clung to their drums and religious ceremonies. They passed on their tribal songs and rhythms from generation to generation. Of course, under the impact of slavery, other religious influences, and poverty, their religions were forced to undergo some changes. The result of these changes would eventually come to be known as voodoo, from the word voodoo or voodoo. On pages 36 to 37 of this book, Michael Ventura explains how organized voodoo came to America. Many of the pagan practices that survived in the West Indies were not allowed by the American slave owners, but Haitian slaves went to New Orleans in 1792. This emigration is cited as the beginning of organized voodoo in that city. Satan deceptively entered Western music without his presence being noticed. After 1817, in Congo square African music was put into a Western form of presentation. Now the religious African element, still present, became a secret within the music rather than the object of the music, because the visible elements of ritual worship were now hidden. A much wider audience could accept African music. This is again from the book Hear That Long Snake Moan by Michael Ventura, whose Whole Earth Review, Spring and Summer 1987, page 38. The demonic connection between the ancient occult and more modern music and dance is not very hard to find. Even the names confess the truth. Here again, the book Face the Music by Leonard Seidel, Grace Unlimited publication, Springfield, Virginia, 1988. The dances of New Orleans were named for the voodoo gods of ritual worship. The samba was dedicated to the god Simbi, god of seduction and fertility. The conga was named after the African demon Congo, and the mamba was named after the voodoo priestess who offered sacrifices to the demons during rituals. At first, the slaves sang Christian words to the beat of the African drumming. The southern plantation owners began to suspect that there was something distinctly ungodly about the music these supposedly converted slaves were producing. And after a while, the argument that the words were good didn't hold up. For a time, slaves were forbidden to use their drums. This ban didn't serve to convert the slaves. Rather, a new sound was created that was intended to produce the same spirit. It was called blues. Through blues, the same polyrhythms that used to be made only by drums could be made with other instruments. In this way, the angry slaves were able to continue worshipping their African gods in a new, quiet way. Blues was a sound the African slaves created once they had been deprived of their drums. Blues with its multi-rhythmical combinations, polyrhythmic, possessed the elusive but essential qualities of swing. Its beat was so implicit that the blues musician, for the first time, didn't need a drum. Its polyrhythms are African in origin. Blues may have had to leave the drums behind at first, but it still wasn't a spiritually clean style of music, not by a long shot. The blues gets its name from an Elizabethan phrase, blue devils, meaning a fit of bad temper or melancholy. Blues was traditionally a secular music belonging to theaters, clubs, brothels, drinking halls, and concerns of the flesh. The subject matter of blues often expressed betrayal, mistrust, perversion, and sexual desire. The sexual nature of many of the songs was deliberately veiled in African colloquialisms and terms. As a result, the white listeners who heard the music could often not understand the full meaning of the songs. March music uses drums, but the rhythm is still kept third in the order of focus, with melody being first. There's a very easy way to check whether the music has the right balance or whether the rhythm is the heavy, syncopated rhythm from ancient sun worship. You check the neck. Does your neck start moving and your chin bopping to the beat? If so, that's a mark of Satan's worship music. This has been his mark in music ever since music first became adulterated and used in worshiping him. But we have digressed a bit, or digressed a bit. Let's get back to our study of the history of heavy rhythm music. In blues and jazz, the same emphasized polyrhythms, once only created with drums, now could be created with other instruments. And the demonic and sexual presence in the music was only thinly veiled on the words and titles most folks didn't understand. Early jazz and blues terminology and meaning: funky, positive sweat or strong smell with strong sexual connotations. Moyo, soul, an object invested with spiritual power and the capacity to heal or influence. Boogie, devilishly good. Juke, bad or devilish, hence the term juke box, the devilish box. And jazz, an immoral act, another term for sexual intercourse. So, what about jazz? This is a photo of Buddy Bolton's famous jazz band. Buddy Bolton is credited as being the father of jazz. Very few Christians would find anything wrong with jazz today. But jazz is not innocent. In fact, the spiritualist religion of Africa was very present in jazz. The voodoo was just packaged up in a new way to interest Western people. One of the most admired things about jazz is the improvisation. Improvisation happened when the musicians played jazz together without sheet music. A whole group of people could just start playing and could make the music flow together like a well-designed tapestry. But Michael Ventura explains that this supposed talent was not human. Here's what he writes. Most people don't have any idea what true improvisation is. It means the magical lifting of one's spirits to a state of trance. It means experiencing oneself as another kind of living organism. It's to do with religious forces. It's about magic and capturing spirits. The Jazz Book. For this reason we see that the modern popular styles of music aren't really that different. The syncopated rhythm, which is from the occult, is a common thread that runs through them all. Taking an active interest in jazz means working for a majority because the popular music of our times feeds on jazz. All the music we hear in television series and on top 40 radio, in hotel lobbies and on elevators, in commercials and in movies, all the music to which we dance, from Charleston to rock, funk and disco, all those sounds that daily engulf us, all that music comes from jazz, because beat came to Western music through jazz. That's in page 3 of Joachim E. Berendt. Thus far, we have been talking about popular and ancient music outside of the Christian realm. But our real focus is on the music we use to worship Yahuwah. Has this occult music come into Christianity? Have some Christians unknowingly used Satan's worship music to supposedly worship Yahuwah? To answer this, once again, we have to return to the time of slavery in America. When the African captives were forced into slavery, they naturally resisted. One way they resisted is by refusing to accept the white man's religion. But if a slave didn't at least pretend to be Christian, he could be beaten or worse. So, African slaves became good at worshipping Satan while pretending to be Christians. This is how the Pentecostal style of worship began. The same African rhythms that had come into popular American music through the New Orleans voodoo music came into Christianity through the early Southern holiness churches. The symbols of voodoo changed, but the frenzy involved in the style of worship and musical expression remained intact. Visible possession by the Holy Ghost was as much a formal goal in the religion of the Southern holiness churches as possession was in voodoo. Physical manifestations of possession were the same symptoms as manifest by those people who became possessed by the gods in African ritual ceremonies. That's again from the book Hear That Long Snake Moan by Michael Ventura. Eventually, this form of worship was absorbed into the Protestant church liturgy, infusing these voodoo-style rhythms into their praise and worship services as well. It was at this time, during the mid to late 1800s, that America witnessed the frenzy of hysterical revival meetings. This was the beginning of the holiness movement, incorporating the holy flesh concept and other doctrines derived from voodoo. Since we have seen how Satan has mixed the sacred with the profane in so many areas of modern Christianity, it should really be no surprise that the original Christian rock was nothing more than a mix of African spiritualism and witchcraft with Christian worship. Pagan and Christian meet in the heart of Africa. This is from the book Time, Simon Robinson, February 7, 2000. Drummers thump out a beat as Reverend Isaac Winker prowls the stage shouting. African independent churches mix traditional African spiritual beliefs like ancestor veneration, witchcraft, and the concept of good and bad spirits with elements of Pentecostal worship, including drums and guitars. Okay, so the history of heavy rhythm music shows that it came from the enemy. But is there any scientific proof to show that a syncopated beat has a bad effect on people today? The answer to this question is yes. Consider the following quotations: scientific evidence. Rock music in particular has been demonstrated to be both powerful and addictive, as well as capable of producing a subtle form of hypnosis in which the subject, though not completely under trance, is still in a highly suggestive state. That's from John Fuller in his book, Are the Kids All Right? It is with our bodies that we first respond to the rhythm of music. This is from The Music Within You, page 161, by musical therapist Carol Marie Fishman and Shelley Ketch. It's because our bodies respond to the rhythm of this kind of music in sensual ways that we can identify the enemy's mark in music by checking the neck. But it ought to get our attention to learn that when the rhythm is emphasized in music instead of the melody, the resulting tones put the listeners into an almost hypnotic state. That is serious in a place where the enemy is always looking for ways to destroy us. For we can't resist him or even recognize that we should when we are even a little bit hypnotized. The sexuality of music is usually referred to in terms of its rhythm. It is the beat that commands a directly physical response. That's from Sound Effects, page 240 by Firth. The perception of rhythm involves the whole organism. The Psychology of Music, page 139 by Carl E. Seashore. When pulsation and syncopation are the rhythmic foundations of the music at a dance hall, the movements of the dancers can invariably be seen to become very sensual. That's from The Secret Power of Music, page 199 by David Tame. Musical rhythm affect both our hearts and our brains. One road to arousing a range of agitated feelings, tense, excited, sometimes sexual, is through pronounced and insistent rhythm. Artfully used to heighten the sexual tension, drumming may produce these powerful effects by actually driving the brain's electrical rhythm. That's from Psychology Today, December 1985, page 54. There can be no question that the music itself is a powerful language, Popular music is speaking to the human soul in a sexual and occult message. We understand the message of the music on a deep level, no matter what culture we are from. Now, at this point, maybe you are thinking, no way. The whole sensual primal response, think, isn't enough proof to convince me that music with a rhythm, emphasized instead of the melody, is bad. What would you say if you knew that the musicians who make this music believe it has this much evil power? In other words, as I am about to show you, modern musicians know what they are doing to people through their ungodly music. The irrefutable evidence. Let's go back into the history of this music a bit. What about jazz? Did the leading musicians in jazz intend for the music to worship the unholy Trinity? Jazz musician Duke Ellington said, "Rhythm came from Africa to America. Do you know what it does to you? Exactly what it's supposed to do." Duke Ellington, the famous jazz great, in his libretto to "A Drum is a Woman," in which he makes it clear that he means a drum is a goddess. Clearly, Duke Ellington knew and believed in the ungodly power of music. He also admitted that the drum was an idol goddess. Rock and roll. My true belief about rock and roll, and there have been a lot of phrases attributed to me over the years, is this: I believe this kind of music is demonic. A lot of beats in music today are taken from voodoo, from the voodoo drums. If you study music and rhythms, like I have, you will see that that is true. This is from the Life and Times of Little Richard by Charles White, page 197. Obviously, Rocker Little Richard knew the ugly truth about the beat in rock and roll. Regarding the pop of the 60s and 70s, John Lennon had this to say: rock and roll is primitive and has no bull. It gets through to you. Its beats come from the jungle. They have rhythm. This is John Lennon, Rolling Stone magazine, January 7, 1971. The irrefutable evidence. Plainly, the pagan origins of the rhythms were no secret to him either. The satanic secret of rock and roll is not only known to the musicians. The industry managers know the truth also. Notice what Malcolm McLaren, manager of the British punk band, the Sex Pistols, had to say. Rock and roll is pagan and primitive and very jungle, and that's how it should be. The moment it stops being those things, it is dead. The true meaning of rock is sex, subversion, and style. That's from manager Malcolm McLaren in Rock, August 1983, page 60. Rap and hip hop. Hip hop is the most powerful form of music and communication. It's very spiritual. It's got so many messages within its rhythms, within the drum beats, as well as its words. People don't realize how powerful hip-hop is musically. Music is the most powerful form of communication. That's from Sinead O'Connor. Pop artist Sinead O'Connor proudly proclaims the truth that music itself is the most powerful form of communication. What is going on in the rave celebration is worship, says Nicholas Saunders. What fascinates me is that the rave culture, seen as purely hedonistic by the establishment, is frequently regarded as a spiritual event by those involved. Raves are likened to trance-like tribal rituals, where ravers celebrate their unity and shared uplifted state, giving and receiving freely from one to another. This is from The Guardian, the spiritual aspect of rave culture. What is the purpose of this modern heavy rhythm music? It has the same purpose it had since ancient times in African voodoo practices. It is about putting the listeners into a trance-like state and having a spiritual experience of a very ungodly nature. Trance music is currently exploding into the techno mainstream, but it has existed since man could first whack a drum. It's about feeling, euphoria, and spontaneous levitation of the senses through repetition and organic sounds. Now, having mated with the sleek machines of techno, it's about the future. This is from this website, www.dragonflyrecords. Robert Palmer. In a very real sense, rock was implicit in the music of the first Africans brought to North America, and implicit in their music were centuries of accumulated rites, rituals, and religious fervor. This is from Robert Palmer, Rolling Stone Illustrated History of Rock and Roll. There can be no question that the flipping of the musical elements, making rhythm the focus, is designed for worship. Christian rock, blessing or blasphemy? And who receives that worship? Does the music invented to worship the devil have the ability to become honorable to Yahuwah by giving it good words? Is there any such thing as Christian rock? The only difference between Christian rock and the modern version is the words. The music is the same African-inspired voodoo music, but in modern music the words aren't the source of the music's power. The real power and message was found in the music itself. That's from Amy Grant. The Satan sign is plainly seen at Christian concert. Could it be that Satan is being worshipped? Exactly. The devil has coveted Yahuwah's rulership and worship. He wanted to take the worship that was due only to Yahuwah, and through music he has accomplished his goal. Before he fell, Satan was the leader of the musicians in heaven. He knows all about music, and by reversing the musical elements, he created music that has his mark. This kind of music honors Satan and not Yahuwah. So let's take a moment and play the check, the neck game. Let's see if we can recognize. Yahuwah's music has his seal. His music always has this order and emphasis. Sealed or marked, Here we have the seal of Yahuwah, and here's the enemy's mark. Seal of Yahuwah is melody, harmony, rhythm. Enemy's mark is rhythm, harmony, melody. And the devil's music has his mark. His music always has this order and emphasis. And how can you tell the difference? Use the easy test of check the neck. If the music carries the devil's mark, the sensual sounds will make you want to respond with neck and head movements. Listen to a sacred hymn after you listen to some Christian rock, and you will be surprised. Do you know how the dictionary defines a bridge? A bridge is designed to connect areas that would otherwise be unconnected. It allows passage from one place to another or from one realm to another. In music, the bridge is used to take us from the realm of Yahuwah to the realm of the enemy. Did you know that the Bible talks about Christian rock? Well, it doesn't use the term, but it does talk about the concept of how Yahuwah views it when a foul spirit gives good words. What about good words? In Acts 16:16 to 18, and it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with a spirit of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. The same followed Paul and us, and cried, saying, These men are the servants of the Most High Elohim, which show unto us the way of salvation. And this did she many days. But Paul, being grieved, turned and said to the Spirit, I command thee, in the name of Yahushua Messiah, to come out of her. And he came out the same hour. It doesn't honor Yahuwah when good words are given by a foul spirit. Just as a foul spirit cannot honor the Most High Elohim with good words, music which was designed to worship the devil cannot produce heavenly praise. The truth is that the devil's music is still the devil's music, no matter what culture you are in, and no matter what words you put with it. The spirit of the music has not changed. We should be grieved when the sacred is mixed with the profane. Ezekiel 22:26, her priests have violated my Torah and have profaned mine holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and profane, neither have they showed difference between the unclean and the clean, and have hid their eyes from my Sabbath, and I am profaned among them. Do not be fooled. Yahuwah is never honest when Satan worship is mixed with his worship. Pure water mixed with mud can never be anything more than muddy water. Babylon is fallen. Come out of her, my people. Most Christians wouldn't suspect that the call to come out of Babylon might have anything to do with music. But since Babylon is all about false worship, music is right at the heart of it. And if we wish to receive the zeal of Yahuwah, we need to worship Him with clean music that is pure, heavenly praise. We need to have our eyes opened. There's no such thing as Christian rock. In fact, the devil is more honest to Christian rock than regular rock. Why? Because he has got people worshiping him thinking they're honoring Messiah. And since he fell, this has been the devil's goal, to receive the worship due to Yahuwah. The kind of music that honors our Heavenly King is as it has always been, the kind where the rhythm is quiet and regular, and the melody is strongest, accompanied by beautiful harmony. This is the kind of music that worships Yahuwah and has a seal no matter what culture you are from or language you speak. Now, if we have already acquired the taste for the devil's music, please listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit calling you out of Babylon today by depending on the power of Yahuwah when you are tempted. He'll give you the strength to choose and even enjoy music that honors Him. The great I Am can change your tastes. Let us in the future carefully choose the kind of music that gives glory to Yahuwah. May we never again be found worshipping Satan through our music. And when in doubt, check the neck. Please give us a thumb up if you agree with this message. The supreme provider is Yahushua Messiah. And as mentioned in the beginning, this presentation originally came from Shauna Manfredine, Lighted Way Ministries. It was changed into a different PowerPoint presentation and recorded by myself. If you want to get a hold of me, you can write me to Malachi 4.4 at reagan.com or go to the website thefigtreegeneration.net or thefigtreegeneration.com. Shalom.